there's a couple of announcements that I really want to make. And one of them is that we're having a film collaboration. So if you are an independent filmmaker or, aspiring, that you just really, you like the thought of it, maybe you think you could. So what we're going to do is we're going to have 9 teams or 9 groups of people. It can be an individual as well. Those 9 groups, they're going to write a script and they're going to create a film with only 10 minutes, with only using their phone. You all have to work together because at the end of each 10 minutes, we are going to take all of the collaborative 90 minutes and make it into a feature film. So it all is cohesive. It all moves together. You can use actors from other 10 minutes and write them into your script and have them film from their location. And then we'll edit those together. But that is the challenge. I don't have a end date yet. Right now I am gathering all of the groups. So if you want to be a part of it, please email me as soon as possible at zarlequan@protonmail.com. Would love to hear from you. I keep asking myself, why? What's the why? So why do I have this guest on here? Why do I want to share this person with you? And so Alyssa Zander is one of our guests today, and I really enjoyed speaking with her. She's just has a really sweet spirit, and she's going to help you understand, what does codependency even look like, and how can you move away from that? And she promises that when you do this work on yourself, you will discover that you can keep those people in your life, but you change your perspective about things and how you communicate with people, with others. And so it changes your entire life and how you relate to each other. So that is why she is here today. And then Rhonda Parker Taylor, she is a crime thriller author. And yes, crime is exciting. I mean, crime thrillers are pretty exciting. And so, yes, I brought her on for that. But she shares her writing process, and she explains that it's not just a crime thriller. This is like a representation of real life and how people deal with struggles, and what's a more effective way to deal with it, and how to really look at your look inside and understand yourself better. So this is a multifaceted guest. She is a bestseller. And then we have Jaymes Buckman. He is the lead singer for the sparkliest rock and roll band in the galaxy, Hot Apollo. And he will be sharing his writing process as well. He's also a poet with a published book on Amazon. And he's going to share, and at the end of this video, there will be a link to his music. If you stay there and go to the end credits, you will see a link to one of my favorite songs of Hot Apollos. So stay tuned for that. There are timestamps in the description box below, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Zarlequan Indy-Verse! I'm your host, Brittani Starr, and today we have a fantastic guest joining us, Alyssa Zander. She's not just an author, but a codependency and relationship coach, guiding women on a path to healing, empowerment, and self-discovery. Her book, Healing the Mother Wound with Mother Nature, is a poetic journey through life's darkest moments and an exploration of self and soul. Now let's dive into Alyssa's world and her wisdom. The Empowerment Zone. Welcome to the show, Alyssa Zander.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and honestly a privilege to be here and just chat with you today. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now, your work focuses on healing codependency and relationships. Could you tell us what led you down this path and why is it so important for you?
Yeah, so what led me down this path was really just my own, I'll just name it. My Saturn's return kind of like threw me and spit me out and really brought up all of my own codependency patterns that I was completely unaware of. So I would say like around 30, like all my relationships just kind of imploded on themselves. And I was really invited to look more curiously at where I was a part of the dysfunction that was happening in my relationships with my family and my relationships with romantic relationships and my friendships. So it was this like really internal time in my life where I started seeing myself more intimately in that way. And then that kind of just led into sharing it with the world in a myriad of different ways.
Wow. So you wrote this book of poetry, but it was written during your darkest period. How does this inspire women now to not be codependent?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a lot of the poems that are in the book were ways that I was processing. I went through a very traumatic childhood where I experienced abuse, and even then, when I was a teenager, I used writing as a form of just healing and just being able to see myself because I felt so alone and isolated in my experience. And so that kind of stayed with me throughout my life. And I used this book, like, well, actually, it dropped in, like, it just dropped in for me. Like, you're meant to compile all of this, what I thought was like, no one wants to look at that. Like, that is, no one should see that. But really, what I've noticed in my work with women and as a codependency and relationship coach, the more I share my story, the more I share how I've processed and what I've moved through, the more women feel seen and heard in their experience. And then I was like, whoa, that is healing the mother wound, because the mother wound says we have to do everything alone. We're comparing ourselves to others. There's a lot of judgment that we hold for ourselves, and quite frankly, like unconsciously kind of hold for others. And so by sharing our stories, by putting my deepest, darkest, moments in book form, I am healing the mother wound within me that says that I have to do it alone, because I don't have to do it alone, that we're actually healing together. The more I share the pain and the joy, the more others get to have that permission to do the same.
Beautiful. So poetry can be deeply personal and vulnerable, as you have shown. How did you find the courage to share this with the world?
Still looking for it. Like, it's so interesting because I can sit in a room full of women and lead them through a guided practice and a guided meditation, and my voice will not shake. I feel very like grounded and rooted. But when you put me on a stage to like share poems from this book, I immediately like my voice shakes, my body is shaking. It's like it is so vulnerable, and it actually has been really challenging to do it anyways. How I move through that is reminding myself of my why. Like, why did I even compile these poems? Why did I find a publisher? Why did I do all of that? And it's because my soul's mission is to heal the mother wound. And so when I remember my why of bringing awareness to the mother wound for the collective, I remember that it's not about me, right? Like, it's not about me. It's not about the fears that I have. It's about something like a greater mission. And then I anchor into that. Like, this is for the woman who is alone in this, who feels alone in this. It's for the child or the daughter who experienced the same thing that I experienced, but doesn't know that anyone else is. Like, it's for them. And when it's for them, I can kind of get out of my own like egoic, like, it's not safe to do this state of mind.
What is the first step? Like, how does someone recognize that they are being codependent? And once they recognize that, what's the next step after that? What do we do?
Yeah, so I reflect back to my own personal journey, and there's like three main archetypes that I kind of have seen myself personally navigate, that first one is like the student, which you just kind of named, like, okay, what's that first step? It's creating awareness. It's that learning period where you're gathering information. So what I would say is start diving into what codependent patterns even are, what they look like, how they show up in your life. And I think that there's a huge need to rewrite how we relate to the word, even codependency, because we see it as just a substance abuse term, which it absolutely can be and is, but it's so much more than that. Codependency is when we place our worth or our good feelings about ourselves on something or someone outside of ourselves. So that can be your job or your relationship and it meaning something about you. It can be the car you drive, the home you live in, and how you're making it mean something about you. Society has truly primed us to be codependent on materials. And so we begin to liberate ourselves when we say, okay, I'm willing to see where this is playing out in my life so that I can, because in that awareness, then I get to take radical personal responsibility for my life. So I would say if you're in that, I call it the student, when you're the student, start just bringing curiosity, learn about it like you've learned, like learning something new for the first time, not with judgment, even though that comes in very loudly for people who experience codependency. Instead of the judgment, can you allow for grace? Because there's a very wise part of you that created that codependent pattern, and it was to keep you safe at a point in time. Now, as adults, it's not keeping us safe anymore. It's actually keeping us more isolated and in separation. So I would say be a student, be curious. What is codependency? What does that look like? What are some patterns? And then find a group to support you. It's why I created the membership, because I needed it. I needed a group of women who would come together so we could talk about our dysfunctional patterns with levity, like some place to be held accountable and to receive continuous support. It's super helpful.
Now, some degree of codependency, because we are all one human race and we kind of depend on each other, is not only acceptable but healthy. Finding that line, and that's where you come in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wild and beautiful to be on the other end of codependency and have like interdependence, because like you said, we do heal when we come together. We do heal when we allow ourselves to receive support. It's when you're making that support and that person or that thing outside of you means something about your value or your worth. So the freedom that I get to experience, will use friendships, when I get to connect with a new friend, and then for some reason that friend just doesn't align or resonate anymore, we get to release them without this attachment of like, no, if you're my friend, you need to be that person for me forever and always, or it means something bad about me. Instead, we start living in this symbiotic relationship where people get to come together at beautiful, opportune moments and then fall apart when it's a dance. We start dancing with life and with relationships, instead of grasping on for this like false sense of ownership, in a sense.
Yeah. Man, that's really deep. What new projects do you have on the horizon? What can we look forward from you?
Yeah, I pour into my offers called Codependency Alchemy. I have a podcast for those students, like where do you start? The podcast I have is a great, entry point. It's like, okay, let me just start hearing about these patterns and hearing the stories so I can begin to weave and relate it to my own. And then I have a membership also, Codependency Alchemy, the membership, where I support women in answering questions every week. Every week they get to come in and say like, okay, my partner did this and this is how I reacted, and like help. And I'll go into our private broadcast on Telegram and I'll leave voice notes with guidance, with support, with shadow work questions to move through, prompts. And we do that on a weekly basis and meet once a month on Zoom as well, just to collectively come together and just be held in the space. And then I have a mastermind, which is a much more intimate group of women. It's less than 6 women, and I only open that 2 times a year because we are doing the deep work, and that takes time and it takes commitment and devotion. And that's kind of ongoing. People who want to stay in the mastermind have stayed, continuing on because they really love to have that space to just be like, okay, I need that sisterhood. I need that community. I need that support when I'm arguing with my partner or when my child is mirroring to me some of my stuff. It's just so nice to have a place to vomit it all out. Women didn't really have that. Generations before us, they didn't really have those spaces to just be held. And so that's just what I've created because I see the women in my life, how much they didn't have that and how much they had to do on their own. And so I've created the membership and the mastermind to hold us, to hold me in it as well.
I want to thank you for creating that space for women, because you're right. I think it has been severely lacking. Yeah. Women do take on so much and say nothing. We do it with a smile while we're falling apart. Our leg is behind us dragging, and we just keep going and go, well, nobody else is going to. So I'm really grateful that you created this beautiful community for us to hold each other.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. I truly believe that we get to live radically different, where we don't have to keep that smile on the face while we hold our child and vacuum the floor and pick up the groceries all at the same time. Like, the more that I've leaned into healing my codependency, the more I see that my partner, he wants to do the vacuuming. Like, he wants to order the groceries. Like, our partners want to be helpful. And when we learn how to communicate and live in this symbiotic relationship with one another, where needs are articulated without blame or judgment or shame or guilt, even, you start building this, like, it's beautiful what can happen. I've been with the same partner for 10 years, but we've had a break, and my relationship, the first half of our relationship to this half, 1000% different. And I think it really is all because of the healing of codependency. And it's an ongoing journey. It's not like I'm healed and it's like gone forever. It still comes up from time to time, but you really begin to see how it's not the person necessarily in the relationship. It's just the dynamic that you're creating with them.
Oh, personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I love that you just expressed that, how you're in the same relationship with the same person, but it's drastically different because of you.
Yeah.
That's powerful, because I think a lot of people think they have to, well, I have to leave him. He's terrible. He won't do things. And that's a beautiful testimony. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All of Alyssa's links will be in the description box, so go ahead and click there, her book and her website, so you can go be a part of this beautiful community that she has created.
Conversations with Indie Authors.
We have the author of the captivating crime thriller book Crossroads with us today. Please welcome to the show Rhonda Parker Taylor.
Hi, welcome everybody. Can't wait to engage with you and talk about our creativity processes and how we can apply that to our lives. I'm just really excited about this podcast.
Thank you so much. So this is your debut book, right?
That is correct. It is the debut book. What it's about is how people navigate their lives and become unbalanced. And because of that, it's a crime thriller. So it leaves the main character, Paris Pennington, basically in a position where things can happen to her because she's just totally unaware of her surroundings, what she's doing. She's got a core value of work. So everything's about thriving and having goals and achieving those goals. But when she gets called to jury duty in 1982 for a young woman that has died and she becomes the foreman, it completely changes her life as she starts questioning why her life is unfulfilled. And she learns a lot about herself through this this process of being the foreman of the jury. She tries to get out of jury duty like a lot of us try to, and it just didn't work. And she was there and she learned a lot about herself and others. And I'm hoping that the audience, after they read it, those that do choose to pick up the book, that they learn about themselves and how they're willing to sometimes put to their own detriment, put other things before their own happiness.
So there's a lot going on in this book. And then speaking of which, your book has made it to the hands of some pretty incredible people. You've got some reviews from best-selling author J.J. Herbert and Golden Globe nominated actress Mariel Hemingway. How did that come about?
Well, for me, the best process of writing the book was finding a good partner that would help me navigate the publishing part of the book and also get my book into the hands of people that can actually read it and know, hey, this is a great novel. This is, these are the things that you need to change. So I was able to come up with what's Mindster Media, which is a blended matrix versus just traditional or self-publishing. So what they do is not only do they help you edit it and get it distributed, but they also help you figure out who would be the best person to review your book. And in that case, they said, Mariel is all about life balance. She really enjoys books, and her great-grandfather or her grandfather is Ernest Hemingway. So she's also an author. And they said, you need to write a query letter to see if she would be interested in reading your book and endorsing it and working as a partner with you. So, of course, I'm new at the process and I'm a little insecure and feeling vulnerable about putting your work out there. So all of those people out there in your audience that really would like to be a published author, a best-selling author, or even just starting their book and just dreaming about it, know that once you put the things in place, there are organizations and people that will believe in your work. All it takes is being vulnerable. So I wrote that letter. It took me probably 2 or 3 days, to write it and, get my manuscript together for her to read it before, and I'm like, okay, but it hasn't been to the editor yet. And they're like, that's the way she wants it. She wants to be able to see it and read it and decide for herself if you're worth and your work's worth her supporting. So she read it and then she came back and she did a wonderful video. And I think one of my favorite lines in the YouTube video of endorsing it was that at the end, she talks about how we all go through times and where we're at a crossroads in our life and we're trying to decide whether we're on the right path. And she said that at the very end, she said in Paris's case, that we all have to come to the point that even chocolate, to realize that even chocolate has an expiration date. And I thought she got the book. She got the whole idea that, as we navigate life, sometimes things aren't meant to be permanent. And sometimes we stay stuck in our own world because we're being loyal or out of fear. So she endorsed it, and JJ also was one of the facilitators of getting it in her hands. So I really feel blessed that, you know, I did my homework. I looked what was best for me, because not every publisher's right for every person. You've got to pick one that you can work with. And I found the one that worked for me. And, you know, that's been 7 months now. It's been a best-selling, you know, on Amazon on 2 or 3 different categories. And I've been able to get it, you know, in the bookstores, the Barnes and Nobles. And you know, I would never in my wildest dreams thought that a girl from Indiana could actually get to this far. I can't wait to get my second one out.
That's amazing. Yeah, in 7 months. Congratulations. Amazing work.
Thank you.
Can
Thank
you
you.
tell us what inspired a crime novel from, I mean, you're from Indiana. Do you encounter a lot of crime, or how did you go about researching for this? Because this isn't your average everyday kind of stuff.
No, it's not. And I would say it's two or threefold. One is I like people. And so developing characters that are just, you know, have things going on in their lives, whether it be the workaholic that's the main character, or the one that did the crime. I really wanted people to relate to them. I had been working in a community service project called the Adopt a Block, and we watched different cases going through the justice system. And I saw sometimes the justice system just isn't fair. And sometimes even when society thinks it's fair, it's still, there's always a win and a loss in it. And that's just life for everybody. We all go through wins and losses in life, whether it be adversity, you know, a death in our family. So whereas I'd never been victimized by a crime, I can clearly empathize with the fact that there's a process that everybody goes through when you get all thrown into this scenario because of a crime. The main driver, so I try to put a kind of a message that will resonate with my reader. So I first develop the people, and I use what they call a SOAP note. So those of you that are in the medical community would understand that I go in and I define everything about the person, from their heights to their shoe size to, you know, they broke their ankle when they were in 3rd grade and had to have surgery, so that I know when I get into a scene how they're going to react and what's going to happen to them. Are they going to have a limp? Do they have anxiety and they won't be able to breathe? You know, all these things. So once I get to the scene and the storyline part of it and start delivering the message of my writing, then it's easy because I already know my character. It's like they're my friend, my brother, my sister, someone, you know, close to me. Every single one of them, I know what their history has been about. So then when I get to the plot and the message, like, so for Crossroads, the message is anger is cruel, which we all know that anger causes crimes every single day. You know, they call it the crime of passion. Fury is overwhelming. And we know when especially as hotheads out there, if you've ever had a bad day and you're furious about something, it's going to get you. But who can stand before jealousy? Envy makes the bones rot. So that's the message you'll find throughout Crossroads, that you'll have someone that may have an anger outburst, and it may seem to the average individual that it may be a little bit over the top for an outburst, because anger does that to you. Same thing with fury. But then in envy, it changes the relationships. When someone is envious of another, especially in today's society where everything's, you know, electronic and everybody's bigger, faster, smarter, they've got more education, they've got more views on YouTube, whatever it is that we see, and we start comparing, it changes the relationship. It doesn't matter whether we're comparing ourselves to someone else, or we're the ones that are being compared to. It changes for both parties, the relationship, and it changes how we have to deal with each other. Because when there's jealousy and envy in between people, whether it be sitting in a jury room or a best friend, or even a coworker, how many times are we at work and there's office gossip because someone's getting a promotion instead of supporting them? When we get that in the mix of our surroundings and the relationships that we're with every day, then it really changes our purpose. You can't fulfill your own purpose if you're envious of somebody else. So I really want people to think about, in my life, do I have life balance? Am I fulfilling my purpose? And as you see the characters interplay, do I have envy? Do I have anger towards people? Or do I have unresolved emotional aspects of my relationship with people that need to be resolved?
Well, speaking of relationships, you have been married for a good deal of time, right?
I have, yes. I've been very lucky.
That's amazing. The book seems to focus on more the emotional side than the crime.
Well, the crime is there. You're in the, you're in the jury room. You're in the courtroom where everything's, happening, and you're trying to figure out what really happened to this young 15-year-old girl that had been stabbed to death. But at the same time, anytime you're in the legal system, it changes you. And then as you get through the crime trial part of it, what ends up happening is things start happening to the main character, who she ends up being the foreman of the case. People start getting sick around her. People start dying. The police have to follow her to find out what's going on. They think they know, so then it becomes like an Agatha Christie of why this is happening to you. And that here again, the same emotions go through it: anger, fury, and envy, because now you have a whole new opportunity when someone's life is unbalanced and they've been taken out of their daily routine. That also changes in the navigation of your life. When someone's busy and is a type A personality, and the balls in the air start dropping, what's going to happen next then?
That makes sense. So did you shadow some police officers? Did you go to the courthouse? How did you research for this?
A through Z, anything and everything. What I would do is, because I was sitting in courtrooms for the community service project that I was working on, I was in the courtrooms all the time. But for instance, the autopsy, I'd never been in one, and that's not something that you can easily get access to. So I actually got the training manuals on how you do, from an educational standpoint. I am a college professor, and in my business life, I work with people that are trying to get their masters and their dissertations done for their final educational projects. So I knew that I could do research too. Now, for the police bantering, one of the main things that I did for them is I did ride around with a police officer. I never got to see a murder scene, but I did get to see how they interact and how they support each other, even in bad accidents, etc. And then for getting the feel of how people react when they're in those situations, I got access and signed up for listening to 911 calls. Where I could hear, how the patterns of when people call in, crimes, how, what kind of pattern of their conversation, and how do they chop off different words when they're in that stressed moment. So I did a variety of different things. If I needed to have a gloomy feel, I might even put some music on that was, a little bit more like, maybe like the Doors or something that, has more of a, a depressing sound that would make me feel in that same mode. Or reading, I would sit down and read a book that was in the same genre to get my mind on how do other authors handle these kind of problems. And then writing groups and beta readers are invaluable to an author.
Yeah. So you mentioned your background before. You have business and quite an extensive educational background. How do you think that helped prepare you to be an author?
Well, I think it gave me the backbone to sit down and finish. Writing, I hear it all the time. I have a book that I would like to write. And they say, how do you do it? And the key to being an author is starting and finishing. So if you write 1 page a day, your novel is done in a year. So if you do it in those chunks, granted, some days you'll sit down and you can write out 10 pages or get the story out, and I think being in business, I think it's helped me have the background and grit to finish. And then the second thing that it helped me understand is writing was only the first step. When you're a writer, it doesn't automatically get in everybody's hands. You have to have a team. It's a project. It's just like any other business. After you get that creative part done, you have to be willing to either find a partner and, maybe they get a percentage like the traditional publisher does, or do it all yourself. And if you have that kind of time or energy, then you could do a self-pub and be an indie author, or you can do a matrix. But no matter how you do it, and matrix is where it's a little bit of both. But no matter how you do it, you have to realize it's a business. You have a product, you have an operations, you have to have something to deal with, the financial aspects and the accounting of the sales and the reports that you do for the IRS and for your taxes. You have to have a marketing piece, just like any business. So I think that business background and education really helped me understand, okay, the first part is the part that you have passion about, and getting that story out and getting it on paper and making your mark in the world by leaving something behind, all the things that authors feel when they finish, and the pride. But the second part is, okay, and actually my husband was, right after mine came out, he had this little come to Jesus meeting with me because I was so excited about my first good review, and Mariel had agreed and did her YouTube video, and he's like, okay, are you in this for the pat on the back, or are you in this because you want to be an author and you want people to read your books? And I really at first was had to evaluate, well, why am I in this? Did I really just want to get it published, which is what I had been saying? I just want to get it published. I want to get it off my desk. I don't want all that work to go to waste. But really, it was more than that. And he was right. If I wanted to be successful, I had to put my business hat on.
Absolutely. Can you share with everyone how they can find you and your book online?
Sure. Okay. So I try to make it easy. My book is Crossroads, Rhonda Parker Taylor, and you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or BAM's websites. It's Rhonda with an H, Rhonda Parker Taylor. And same thing with my website and all my social media is Rhonda Parker Taylor. And I love to hear from people, whether they've purchased the book and read it or whether they're thinking about being an author. I shoot me a message and we can talk about your process. I hope I can inspire people to follow their dreams in that. So yes, so RhondaParkerTaylor.com, and then it's also in select Barnes and Noble stores.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing all of your knowledge and being open to share more with amazing authors or aspiring authors.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I hope that everybody has a blessed day.
And today we have a wonderfully talented artist joining us today, Jaymes Buckman. He's the poetic wordsmith, the charismatic actor, and the dynamic vocalist of the galaxy's sparkliest rock band, Hot Apollo. I'm telling you, when I first heard their music, I was getting some serious Young Bowie vibes, or even LA circa the 1990s.
Conversations with Indie Artists.
Please give a warm welcome to the one and only Jaymes Buckman.
Hey, thank you. I'm actually curious now. I don't know what was happening in LA in the 1990s, so if you have recommendations, I am here for them. But yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Was Bowie one of your inspirations?
Not like in any particular way, but I do like he is an artist I've enjoyed a lot of the work of, specifically the first like half of his career, I would say. I don't know much he did after like the early 80s, but like the whole like glam era and the sort of like early 80s like romantic like dance pop kind of thing, I was into that.
Tell us a little bit what got you into music.
There were two things I was quite certain of from an early age. I had a knack for writing, specifically poetry, lyrics, that kind of thing. And I always loved performing. Like from like almost as early as I can remember, like I was in like all the like theater camps and like drama classes, like were my favorites in like grade school, that kind of thing. So I would always like, perform like in any way I could, wherever I could, to the point where in periods where I didn't have any sort of actual directed healthy outlet, I would do stupid stuff like jumping on my desk in class and bursting into song. So I always had like that energy and I needed to do something with it. And around like middle school kind of age, a lot of my friends who played instruments were starting their bands. And I thought, all right, this would be good for me. I should get in on that. But no one liked my voice. So they didn't want to let me sing. They loved my lyrics. And they said, you know what? We know you have a drum kit at your house. You're not a good drummer, but you can keep beat. So why don't you drum for us? And we'll use their lyrics too. And I thought, any way to like perform and also get my words out there, sure, why not? But eventually I realized I don't want to be a drummer. I'm not a drummer. I've met drummers. I have an awesome drummer in my band. You can tell when someone is like made for an instrument and their soul's in it. And I don't want to be a part of music where the soul's not in it. And the way to get my soul in it was to, be out front, jumping around like a maniac, and just being loud with my voice. And so I'm pretty stubborn for good and ill, and I dedicated myself to it, and I developed my voice to a point where it works. And so that was basically my musical journey, and since then I've just been set on it.
So you write all the songs for the band?
All the lyrics and like the music's a more collaborative process. I can play like just enough of guitar and piano to like, construct like a rock and roll riff, but like the actual instrumentalists in the band are complete virtuosos. So that's the actual like musical part of it is much more collaborative, and I want to give it up to them in particular because the musicians in Hot Apollo are just incredible.
Hot Apollo is described as the sparkliest rock and roll band in the galaxy. Where did that come about?
It just felt true, and it sounded good, and those are like the two best things. As a poet, truth is beauty, beauty truth.
Absolutely.
And if you can make a slogan out of that, let's go for it. I think if you're a fan of just like any kind of rock music, I'd say we're quite accessible, but we do have our own spin on it. Like we we take it in directions that would be new to you, but still familiar enough to like there are like a lot of things. It can be a sort of comfort for people. And I think if you're looking to feel the way you did about maybe some of the music that spoke to you when you first getting into it, but brings a fresh iteration on that, I'd say we're good for that. But also, like I've been playing at shows, and like people will wander in from the street because they'll hear us outside, and like some of them don't even like listen to like anything remotely in the rock genre. They're like fans of hip hop or like maybe dance music or whatever, but they can still get into our stuff. So I'd say we do have that sort of crossover angle that furthers that uniquity.
Can you talk to us about what it feels like to be on stage in front of a lot of people?
Just being on stage in any scenario is just my favorite feeling in the world. Performing like it is a high unlike any other, and that's part of what makes me so resolute that this is my path in life. Just I cannot give it up. Um, but like I mean, I played like smaller shows, bigger shows, but even at some of the smaller ones, people like even at like the tiniest dive bar, people have told me like, oh, uh, I know this is like like a 20-foot bar or whatever, but like you have the energy as though you're playing to a stadium. So yeah, just performing in general, regardless of the crowd size, is just the most transcendent experience for me. I have this sort of brain where uh, I'm always living at several different times. I can be in the moment, but I'm also in other moments too. And I would say performing is like the one time where I'm closest to just being singularly in the present and nowhere else.
You shared with me a wonderful video that you guys made, the original work by Hot Apollo. Can you explain this video that the audience is going to see, please?
I tried to share two of them actually, but I think one just might have been too potent for the internet to deal with, um, the email tubes or whatever. So the one that made it through was "Working on Love," which is sort of a like wonderful like romantic dance track in the sort of uh, vague tradition of like a kind of 80s new wave kind of like club vibes, but with the kind of like uh, rock guitar edge underneath it all. So it's called Working on Love. And it is the second single from our first album.
If you enjoyed this show today, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Remember to stay magical, my friends. The Zarlequan Indy-Verse.